I'm going to share something here that's on a very deeply personal soul level, a deep soul level, particularly as it relates to my father, who I've shared in other videos, was born in 1913. And by the way, when I've shared with you that I picked my biological parents, I picked my father, that date is actually important of why I would pick my father, born on that day. Precisely, actually. Okay. Uh, I've covered that how my father met my biological mother and how I came in precisely at the magnetic moment that it took place, a flash drive motor. Um, but I can remember a time I was experiencing an image just a few minutes ago of being with my father when he had hooked up with a beautiful lady who was a Southern Belle. Most folks know in their history what a Southern Belle is, in a place called Anderson, South Carolina. So this is all Civil War history stuff as that relates to the Anunnaki and the Draco, right? But I'm not going to go off on that library. I want to keep this a tight camera focus. And what I was experiencing was what my father was experiencing in him that's really based on his cellular memories and his cellular library. Now, we can cross-link that to the entire planetary memory banks, if you will, but I'm not going to go there. But what this had to do with, this was at a time when I was a practicing alcoholic. I was practicing being a demon, okay? Sharing space. Which one are you? And most of the folks that were associated with my family, which would be both my older sisters, not my mother, however, but my father did, okay? And this actually can be linked directly to the Bardo point and the quantum probability function, because the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous in New York, they do to a certain degree can keep a certain, plus or minus tolerance for statistical inference. We know what infer is, right? We can infer from the data that if this is what the data is telling us, and then you have to make sure you got all the variables. Remember, keep the question simple. The simplest the question, the less other possibilities that you can narrow it down, right, to no errors. Remember the null hypothesis? Okay. So my father didn't have the benefit of experience, okay, held in cellular memory to believe what was possible. Now, I know with the one, all things are possible. And I've always known that forever. Okay? And so when I was practicing being an alcoholic, right, my family and friends had written me off and said, he's gone. He's not ever going to recover himself. He's gone. Like a Skid Row drunk, There's another one, another casualty. That one won't recover itself, won't be able to recalibrate itself, bring it all back, restore all of its energy. It's not going to be able to come back. My father was one of those. My father didn't believe that, and I could tell that by the words that he said. This does not mean that my father did not love me the same way that he's always loved me, but he was making a statistical inference mathematically, because my father was a brilliant engineer. He was a brilliant mathematician and metallurgist. Obviously knew something about geometry, huh? But I could tell by map reading, what my father was experiencing, that my father didn't believe it was possible. Okay, now we're back to the Bardo point. See? So, for example, generally the statistic that Alcoholics Anonymous used that I can remember was somewhere between 2% and 3%. Folks that end up becoming a practicing alcoholic. So, you can read the big book, particularly the third edition of Big Books of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Where one drink is too many, 1,000 is never enough. And I know what it's like to feel like you've been beat by a demon. I cannot overcome this. And that overcoming actually deals with trauma. Okay? Drug addiction. Addiction itself is looking for the outside as the means to escape what you're feeling on the inside, and it is what we feel as a soul. On the energy and motion level, which is the emotional, right? Scalar waves to experience balance again, right? Perfect balance. And so I was reminiscing somewhat of experiencing, wanting to be able to go back in time to that point where we were sitting there in the backyard of that beautiful brick house in Anderson, South Carolina, to show him what's possible, right? So I'm communicating with my father, okay, of how this works. It's like if my father only knew the full truth of who his son is and why all the information that I've unfolded and shared with all of you in these videos, if my father only knew. But he does. Because we have the ability to communicate with everyone that we're connected to, which is the all creation. And that would include my mother. I had this is the beauty of being a Manu era, is that it's equally distributed. You know, everything that is in my mirror is what I am that I'm giving love to, without distinction, which means, just like I've shared this before about my mother, I love all my children equally. In other words, my mother would not do one for another as she would for another. In other words, she's not going to do anything for my oldest sister. She would the next sister or the next one down the line, which was Linda. I had two older sisters from my mother's previous marriage, who was a ship captain, merchant marine associated with King Edward, right? Simpson, Spence and Young, and that whole gang, right? We know who they are, and Evergreen and all the rest of that. What is it called? Now the Adrenochrome Highway, Adrenaline. Yeah, exactly. And so I just wanted to share this personal story because I've realized, particularly if you've listened to the story with Misha, and how I sort of got, it was communicated to me in a caring and loving, kind attitude that you're wasting your time and your energy on people that she observes I'm spending a lot of time with, trying to assist them, because they're giving us their time and energy in which we can communicate to them, right? So they're spending their time and energy to be with us. So I'm communicating to them. They're communicating back to us. Now we're back into the speed at which they can recover what they've lost as a result of trauma. And that's really what it is. How long is it going to take? So now you get into self-corrective behavior, just like self-correcting tape, right? Override. Or if you will, like I mentioned to Misha, it's like clearing the cache, right? Learning, if you will, and this has been very helpful because I've done this with myself, particularly when you're experiencing running an enormous amount of data because you're spinning at the monad level, running pure light, right? Everything that's held within the light, it's been magnetically recorded. You're experiencing a lot of stuff, which is crunching data at a very high rate of speed, and you're doing a data analysis in a broken system. That's what it is, which is tech support, right? How does system break? Another way you could put it, you could do this, is if somebody took what we generated directly with conscious, which means conscious awareness, what I call dreamscapes, generating the dreamscape in a conscious state of mind, which means you are 100% awake all the time. You are never asleep. The conscious creative mind of the one. You're always with the one. So you're always experiencing the unified field of one, which is experiencing being whole, which is pi. You're experiencing being the whole pi. You are the whole pi, right? So there isn't anything from the center point out in every direction that isn't experiencing what love is. So when you realize, hey, I'm the one, and I'm running the most powerful shield, which is the most powerful firewall, right? That's the eternal engine of electrons. That's why we need a thermostat. We need to cool this character down. Oh, now we're into character maps, computer maps, computational maps, data maps, visual data maps, holographic maps. Hello? Hey, hello. Sound maps. Right? Ding, the echo chamber. That's why right now, particularly last night, I can hear the pressure. I'm hearing the pressure right now. Remember, I've mentioned this before. It's like experiencing a leaky. You're in a factory and they're all running air tools. So, you hear the air compressors going on. Right? When it's shut down, you can hear the hissing sound because air's leaking. So I'm hearing the echospheres, right? And the pressure changes that are taking place. And I can experience, like when Patty mentioned, oh, the plate was being twisted up there in North America. I'm experiencing that directly between both the hemispheres, right? In this physical body, right? It's just like the other day I had some blisters show up right on the center point. If you've ever seen the seal on male testes, right, between one hemisphere and the other. Okay, so you realize there's a line, right, that goes directly up, and these are precise measurements, right? These little blisters were right on that center line, right? Same way I can experience it right up here, and I can experience the twist or the torque speed, right, between the two spirals, between this hemisphere over here, right? So I'm experiencing this physical body, everything that's taking place on the entire earth, right? I'm always with the one. That's why I have certain little things that show up, like right there. See that? I have one on my back because, remember, Amano is a transmutation machine. Getting rid. Remember, I mentioned this before. I issued a command function with the elementals. Basically, when you're running your own supercomputer, right, with a firewall, you're issuing a command function because you have the authority to issue that function. Right? Anything that's less than the purest of light, which is the purest of fire, delete it. Wipe it. Or, if you will, a quantum eraser. So I'm always with the one. That's easy. The one can get rid of anything that doesn't belong there. That appeared as a result of what? Consciousness-directed energy, a directed energy weapon. Consciousness that is directing its consciousness, which is energy, against us. Right? A bioweapon. Right? Now you're into all the exposure, the rate of exposure. And the rate of exposure has a lot to do with what? Holographic speed. Slow you down, slow you down, slow you down. So that the perception, which is the vibrational speed, which is the atomic speed of matter, hold it captive, right? Suck it right down that hole. So that's why I knew as a child, you want to go jump into a Shark Tank? So I experienced that, for example, when I worked for a number of different corporations, but I call it a corporate umbrella stand. It's all under one corporate umbrella stand, right? Because they all have alliances with each other, right? And so that would be the edict that Arshaya talked about, right? So against the founder races, Patty got the speed memo and realized, yeah, that's true. It's a war against the one because I'm experiencing being with the one. So I'm experiencing loving them and what is given back in return. The exchange rate of return between electron donors and electron thieves. I call that the vampire chasing the artist, the first musician, or an inverter going after the first musician. So you know that the first musician is never going to run out of electrons. right? So turn the spigot off. The shield is in effect. And now it's just like on this island when Aaron and I talked with each other the other day. In the use of your energy, the more that you're using your energy that ends up causing any kind of harm against another unit of consciousness on this island here, will certainly slow your speed down. You will get an immediate effect. That's why this was a stronghold, the largest shield volcano. Right? When Patty said this is a Draco stronghold. Well, you could certainly see why, right, on the visible landscape, but you can also know that from an energetic volume point of view, right? Gain of volume, gain of function. So anyway, I just wanted to put this on the public record because of how much I love both my mother and my father equally. And that is a gift of being a Manu, is that I am equal unto all, which means the one doesn't operate a hierarchy. It's unnecessary. When the eternal giver of eternal love, of absolute love, being on fire to gift love away. You know, being on fire to gift love away. Being on fire to gift love away. Because you just cannot hold on to that much energy. You got to give it away at the highest rate of speed. Do not hang on to any energy, ever. And that is pure basic logic, because that's the purest light there is, because that's the purest absolute love, which is eternal love. And that's basic logic. And they can't, you know, and that's why when I was a kid, and when you're already knowing this in elementary school and you're reading newspapers and seeing how this was all set up, it's like duct tape time, because you're insulted. And when you're having to communicate or have a dialogue with a psycho-mental pathway that doesn't have a soul, and then you're trying to engage in, if you will, the way that an argument works between communicating to other computers, the language of DNA communication, the language of math, the language of music, right? It's their ability to process that and translate it properly in the way that they can experience it in them, the way that I experience it in me, is not possible. So it's just, and that's why Lay would tell me, you're wasting your time. A psychopath does not have the ability to translate your codes. Which are the frequencies? Because of the way that I've mentioned this before about how we can take their language, which is distorted, undistort it, and yet still speak the English language in the way in which those codes and those frequencies are properly translated, because they've recovered enough of who they are to be able to make a proper translation to the founder race language. Kirasha. Alhambra, Alhambra, Alhambra. Right? Which means we never forgot the language. The language of vibration and frequency. To experience the atmospherics, the atom spheres, being in perfect balance. So your consciousness, your soul, arcing, is in perfect balance. Right? And so when you're in perfect balance, what are all the other words that we use to describe what it's like to experience that? An eternal state of harmony, an eternal state of rhythm, an eternal state of balance, an eternal state of love, an eternal state of bliss, right? An eternal state of oneness, experiencing being whole with all creation, because we are equal unto all creation. Because that's what balance is. Remember, I used the story when I have a pie. A lot of times it's just, I only need a little piece, just enough to be able to run the frequencies and experience what it's like to experience the frequencies of that pumpkin pie. Is it real pumpkin? Right. How about the original frequency of the first pumpkin seed? Is the original frequency of the first pumpkin seed, can I experience that? Whoa. Cinnamon? You like cinnamon? I love cinnamon. Yeah, cinnamon is one of my absolute favorite. You put that in chocolate, right? Real cacao chocolate with some cinnamon or pumpkin spice, right? Frequencies, yeah, frequency and vibration. So have a beautiful day. I love you all, and thank you very much, Pop. I used to call my dad, my father, Pop. You know, those were some of the words back in those days that were used to describe your father, your dad, DAD, AD. I know. It gets crazy, doesn't it? Yeah. So anyway, Mua, be good to yourselves.